Bendu, and I'm coming at y'all with another video today. So today I wanted to talk about this Ben Norton Twitter thread he put out. Now he put it out a while ago, I think back in April or something like that. But he brought it up and referenced it in the live stream that he and Max Blumenthal did on the Gray Zone with Pepe Escobar, where they were talking about the rat lines, the CIA rat lines. I think that's what they were calling them. Basically like the Golden Triangle, the heroin trade in places like Afghanistan and Vietnam, basically places where the United States were occupying. And I'm bringing this up because it's very weird how Americans, there's set truths that we know. Like we know our government wages bullshit forever wars. We know, like we talk about it like people just, it's a given thing because there's facts and evidence to back it up. But we know the government was funneling drugs into, the black community from places like Vietnam and Afghanistan. Like we know this. So this aspect, goes into me pushing back on this narrative that we were, either, these countries were shitholes, countries like Afghanistan, they were shitholes prior to us being there. And, long after we leave, they're going to be shitholes, this, that, and the third. And also pushing back on the narrative that our troops were in there doing good. Those are two separate narratives. Well, they're the same narrative kind of, but different, because you got people that, understand that, us being there wasn't a good thing and that we shouldn't have been there. But then those people will turn around and make an excuse for the United States, which to me is a form of American exceptionalism. I need to read Danny Haiphong's book when he writes about that. I'm going to read that soon. But that's another form of American exceptionalism. It feeds into the idea that, well, we may have been doing bad things, but there was probably a good reason behind it. And if there wasn't a good reason behind it, then these countries are just shitholes. It's a bullshit, dumbass American Western view of viewing, situations to excuse, the comfortability that you have in your life and, the uncomfortability that we breed in other people's lives, that our government breeds in other people's lives. So, but overall, let's go ahead and get into this thread because it's very interesting. So here we have Ben Norton. So he's talking about Myanmar here because if you don't know, they're one of the reasons why they're leaving Afghanistan is because they're pivoting to Asia. And it's already began. Like if you watch what is his name? His YouTube channel is it's called the New Atlas. Give me 1 second. I'm looking it up on my phone. I could tell you guys. I'm probably going to link it down below as well. His name, I know his first name is Brian. I always forget what his last name is though. Brian Berletic. I love his channel, man. He does such great work when it comes to Asia. He's very informative about, the operations they conduct in Asia in an effort to contain China and stop the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, that's what Myanmar is all about. To those of you that don't know, I watch different people's channels, like I know I watch conservative channels. I watch, liberal channels. I watch just to see what people are saying. And a lot of the conservatives have this, like, they're trying to tie together this correlation between, different movement. Like that's the thing with conservatives. They're on the right track, but still it's always the bias from their perspective that they're pointing at. Like, and it's a shame because that's what breeds this whole narrative. Like, for example, that Trump was an anti-interventionist when literally he killed more Afghan civilians than Barack Obama did, and Barack Obama was in charge, of a very large, I think the largest troop surge outside of the original invasion. So, and he killed more people with bombs than with actual troops on the ground. So he literally dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. So, but that's what they're trying to turn Myanmar into Libya, though. They're trying to turn a country, a nation that's like directly on China's border into basically a failed state. To one, cut off the Belt and Road Initiative, to try to stop it. They're not going to stop it or cut it off. And they want to have this dead weight of a country like right on China's border. That's what this is all about. So he goes on to talk about this, and it's very fascinating. The CIA has a history of running networks of guerrillas in Myanmar. Thousands of Chinese nationalists, KMT, fled to Myanmar after losing the war to the communists. They ran drug trafficking rings for the CIA to fund its covert war on China. So And he's pulling that from an article from pri.org. I'm actually going to be covering this on Friday, so look out for that Friday. I'm probably going to cover both these articles he listed here, this Guardian article as well. But I'm going to be covering that. So, and one of the points Ben brought up in that in the live stream, I don't know if it's going to be in the clips that I'm going to be covering from that live stream. But he brought up the fact that they're basically admitting this, in mainstream publications now. So his point was, give it another, 20, 30 years, they're probably going to be admitting it, admitting what they were doing in Afghanistan. We already know based upon the numbers and based upon what we know about the Taliban. Like when the Taliban was in charge, opium production went down because of their religious beliefs. And it went up when they overthrew them. And also, it went up when they were fighting on behalf of the U.S. Under the Soviets, because they use, as they talk about here, they use that money to fund the guerrilla warfare. So let's get into the next story because he breaks it down perfectly there. The CIA built up a huge network of anti-communist death squads who governed a huge swath of Myanmar, running between Thailand and China in the 1950s. These U.S.-backed right-wing paramilitaries used opium, heroin, to fund their dirty war on communism, fueling the global drug trade. I'd say, and this is directly from the article, this is from one of the guerrilla fighters, actually. And he says, I'd say there's a 50-50 chance that without the American help, we would not have survived, Samboon said. But with U.S. backing, the rebel fighters were able to expand their territory. Now, and again, this is the KMT. This is people that lost the fucking, the civil war that China had. So the point I like to bring up is, imagine the United States going through their civil war and Britain hopped on the side of, the South and fought alongside them, sent them weapons, troops, all types of shit. Imagine that. That is what we do to these countries that are having their inner conflicts, and it underdevelops them. We did it in China. We're doing it. That's the whole situation between China and Taiwan now. People just want to talk about Taiwan's a country. Whatever you have to put it into the historical context of what was going on in that region. And most people don't fucking know. Same thing with Korea. We came in and literally wiped out 23% of the population on the whole fucking peninsula through our mass carpet bombing. So we're literally interfering in these countries' internal affairs. This is why you constantly see China talking about America interfering in people's internal affairs. And people like to say, oh, their internal affairs is mass genocide of the Uyghurs. So continuing, without telling the American public, the U.S. has become a logistical wing of this jungle-dwelling army, not only fighting and flying in 50 caliber machine guns, but erecting radio towers in every zone the KMT conquered. American weaponry and technology, however, weren't their only sources of power. I'm going to shoot you straight, okay? No secret, Samboon said. We also turned towards the opium trade. There are a few places more infamous in Southeast Asia than the so-called Golden Triangle, a swath of rugged hills abutting China that run through Thailand, Burma, and Laos. The phrase conjures images of militants with mud-spattered rifles and sticky brown hunks of opium, the raw ingredient needed to make heroin. For the latter half of the 20th century, most of the world's heroin was churned out of the Golden Triangle. That changed in the early 2000s when yet another American intervention warped the global drug trade. When America invaded Afghanistan, CIA-backed warlords ramped up poppy growth to fund their battles. The Taliban, which had been banning poppy growth, had to reverse course and chase opium profits to keep up with their enemies. The net effect, Afghanistan's poppy production soared. But that wasn't the first time the CIA had propped up opium-rich militias, setting off all sorts of unforeseen consequences, including the opium crisis we're experiencing here in America. And to be quite frank, and to be completely honest, the whole, obviously, what's going on here in the United States with, the opium overdoses and shit like that, and, what's going on here, it harkens back to the crack epidemic that was going on in the Black community. But the difference between that is that now we're supposed to care about little Johnny overdosing on his mom's pills, but when it was Khalil overdosing on crack, they threw him in prison. That's the difference. That's the difference between the two. And that's the difference I'm going to always point out, because now black people are supposed to give a fuck when it's white people suffering. And you could disagree with me and agree with me if you want to, but that is a fact. That is a fact. And I'm not saying this as a race thing. I'm not trying to divide people. I'm saying this because we need to have clarity in history. We need to have a proper contextualization of history in order for us to come to an agreement and catharsis. And that's something that a lot of white America doesn't want to do. That's something that, the parts of white America that we should be aligning with don't want to accept, but it's the part that the shit libs use as a weapon. Literally, they weaponize that shit to draw you in to the establishment. And I don't know how we can fix that besides just continuing to talk about this, spreading this information out there. But it's something it needs to be talked about. And it needs to be a reckoning for that. Because you're going to have a tough time making a lot of black people give a fuck with the history of, the crack epidemic compared to, the opioid crisis we're facing now in America. And don't get it twisted, though. The opium crisis affects black people, too. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it's largely affecting white people now, as opposed to where crack wasn't, because crack was basically like, the poor version of cocaine. So continuing in this article, back in the 1950s, when the U.S. was secretly fortifying the KMT, the rebels were also busy setting up the arteries and networks that sustain the Golden Triangle drug trade to this day. The area remains a narcotic stronghold through its traffickers, though its traffickers are now largely devoted to methamphetamine, a drug powering an estimated $30 billion to $60 billion trade. And if you think the United States and our corporations and Wall Street don't have a hand in that, you're fucking joking yourself. Fucking Deutsche Bank just got caught. Just got caught laundering money for fucking drug cartels, and they just got a fucking slap on the wrist. So if you think they don't have their hands in it, you're fucking delusional. KMT commanders came to dominate, and my family always told me this, that literally, and especially my dad, like you're like, the drugs comes from the government. It funds the CIA. It funds their bullshit, ops and forever wars. This is what they do. KMT commanders came to dominate the opium business in Myanmar, according to Alfred W. McCoy, a professor whose book, The Politics of Heroin, is widely credited with exposing CIA complicity in the Asian drug trade. It didn't hurt that they had new American weapons to guard those long caravans of horses. They also benefited, McCoy writes, from American-built radio towers, which are used to keep tabs on crop production, negotiate routes, and warn of bandits. Within the KMT, the justification for relying on opium was encapsulated by General Tuan, the KMT commander, who said in the mid-1960s, "Necessity knows no law. That is why we deal with opium. We have to continue to fight the evil of communism. And that's what's crazy, man. That's insane. To fight, you must have an army. An army must have guns. To buy guns, you must have money. And these mountains, the only money is opium." When the U.S., and this is Ben Norton continuing, when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan in 2001, the CIA bribed tribal warlords to support the U.S. military occupation. They increased opium production to fund their battles, fueling the global drug trade, creating the problems we have here at home. So again, this is, get rid of this idea. A lot of people, talking to the people in the back of the class, people like Marianne Williamson, get this idea out of your head that the United States is going to somehow protect women in Afghanistan. Get it out of your head, because they don't give a fuck. They murder them. They get them hooked on drugs. They pimp them out. Oh, the United States does this. And it all ties together because Whitney Webb, in one of her articles, and she said this on Graham Elwood's show, she was talking about how Epstein, during a lot of like the conflicts in Europe, Epstein would fly in to these war-torn European countries and recruit young girls. And what kind of plane was he flying in? Well, they said the tail number was a U.S. State Department plane. This funds their operations, and Israel's involved in this, and most of America's allies are involved in this. So again, you know, America is an insidious fucking country, man. We're the evil empire, and we're a waning empire on that. I'm going to be covering reacting to a video from the guy Andrew Neff on his channel about Chris Hedges talking about this exactly. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close the video out there, man. Ben Norton, man, the Gray Zone is doing the Lord's work, man. I swear. The Gray Zone is doing the Lord's work. So yeah, I'm going to close the video out there, guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Follow one of the platforms above my head up there. The point better. Follow one of the platforms there and show love on there as well, and communicate with me there. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Peace.